We got to watch a beautiful sunset last night from the pan, but we want more. If you got an opportunity to watch the sunrise over one of the biggest pans in the world, then you should take it. So we've got up extra early and we've packed up our tent and we are heading out to a little lookout spot to watch the sunrise over the pan.
I find it really difficult to motivate myself for the drive today. Partly because I know it will be a long slog, but mostly because I don't want to leave this incredible place. One day just seems too short. But caffeine definitely helps, and we were soon on our way, with the first section of the day's drive taking us in a southerly direction and out of the Makarikari pan.
So we are leaving Kubu Island, heading south towards a tar road. The southbound road takes us through the pan, which is actually quite nice because it's a nice smooth road. Unlike yesterday's last section, which was these big bumps and dust everywhere and a little bit chaotic. Nice smooth ride this morning. So we're going to enjoy this while it lasts. We're feeling it's not going to be smooth going the whole day. But fingers crossed that when we get to the tar road, that the road is at least in relatively decent condition, because if it's not, it's going to be a very long day. We've got a lot of ground to cover and we don't want to be having to dodge potholes for the rest of the day.
The smooth surface of the pan doesn't last forever, unfortunately, and there are some really bad sections of road that we have to get through, but thankfully this is short-lived, and at the town of Machumo we join up on a tar road. This will be the last time that we'll have to air up on the entire tour, which makes me quite sad. Nicole is more interested in the donkeys and she tries to feed them, but they reject her, which makes her quite sad too. In this video we'll be covering the very long journey from Kubu Island to Port Elizabeth, with the border crossing from Botswana to South Africa and a stop at Leopard's Pride near the border. It's a drive of almost 2,000 kilometers, so we are very grateful to find that the rest of our roads through Botswana are in good condition. We have a single carriageway road up until Palapia, where we join on the A1, which will take us all the way to the capital, Gaborone.
So we're driving through Gaborone at the moment, which is the capital of Botswana, and I've got to say, just driving through here and seeing things here has really reaffirmed that this is a well-run country. There's only like 2.5 million people or something in this entire country, so the tax revenue can't be that great for building infrastructure, and yet the government's been able to keep this place really clean. I'm not seeing any beggars anywhere. I'm not seeing any like rowdy taxis everywhere like we get in South Africa, and most of the vehicles I see driving around look like relatively good cars, which shows that there's enough money floating around here for people to afford decent vehicles. So for me, it's a sign of a well-run country, and that's really good to see. Well done, Botswana, keep it up.
Every country has its good and its bad, and Botswana certainly isn't utopia, but in the context of the African continent, Botswana is kind of an outlier. Botswana used to be the British protectorate of Bechuanaland, but gained independence after putting forth requests to elect their own leaders in 1965. Since then, the country has had one of the fastest growing economies in the world, despite being landlocked and one of the most sparsely populated countries anywhere on Earth. These graphs tell a pretty crazy story. The first graph shows the GDP per capita of Botswana and its southern African neighbors as a percentage of the world average. Botswana was by far the poorest, but is now right at the top, and in fact is the only country that hasn't got poorer. This next graph is just straight GDP per capita. Once again, Botswana starts as the poorest and has rocketed to the top. And lastly, and this one is crazy, this is the GDP per capita of a whole bunch of African countries since the first year of their independence, with 100 being 100% of their GDP per capita value the year they became independent. Botswana has grown almost 800%, while every other country sits there floundering. Now you can say it's the diamonds, you can say it's the tourism, but the reality is that all of these Southern African countries are super rich in mineral resources, and most had great infrastructure inherited from their colonizers at the time of their independence. So they have no excuses whatsoever. The big question is then, what makes Botswana unique? Well, I personally think that the biggest downfall of many African nations is tribalism. Each tribe and people group is so busy bickering between themselves that they neglect the common good of the people. Botswana is about 80% Tswana, and I personally believe that having unity instead of trying to blame somebody else for its problems is a big part of what makes this country successful. They vote for their president not based on what tribe he represents, but on what he can do for his people. Whereas in South Africa, it's all about loyalty to your own tribe or party, and the population doesn't really care how corrupt the leaders are as long as they feel that they are represented by someone who speaks the language and looks the same as them. And meanwhile, the politicians plunder the wealth, all while blaming the apartheid administration for everything. Botswana can't do that because there are almost no white people here. They've taken responsibility for themselves and moved forward. They don't have a mentality of being owed something. They are the masters of their own destiny. Sadly though, our time has come to leave this awesome country as we arrive at the Clockwane border gate.
Sure, the goat's coming through.
Oh, that's illegal.
Yeah,
illegal immigrants. South African goats trying to break in the...
Hey, Kopfontein. Well, we are now in South Africa. Woo! It's a bittersweet feeling. It's sad that our trip is sort of coming to an end. I really enjoyed our time out of the country, but there's really no place like home. My heart jumped in a good way when we arrived back here, and we're now in the Northwest Province, which, you know, although this is my home country, this is a province that I haven't really spent a lot of time in at all. Don't know very much about it. So it is nice to actually be exploring a part of my own country that I don't know. So yeah, we'll be staying at Leopard's Pride game farm tonight, which is about 2 hours drive from the border. When we get there, I hear that the electricity's on and off. That's not Leopard's Pride's problem. That's the government's problem, unfortunately. So we'll have to get a fire going, and we might have to have another braai tonight, but I'm all good with that. I've still got some meat I've got to use up.
The drive to Leopard's Pride takes us through some gravel road shortcuts and on a few tar roads before finally turning in at the gate.
You're looking comfortable. Nice to be out of the car as well.
Wow.
Leopard's Pride is a game lodge owned by a friend of ours who had kindly organized for us to stay here for 2 nights, and we are super grateful to be here. Although it's a little overwhelming to have so much luxury after roughing it for more than 2 weeks.
Look at him. He's so dirty now. He was clean.
There's a really nice Lapa area with a bar and a place to relax, a pool, a fire pit, and some really comfortable rooms.
Ooh. This is really nice. It's a bit of an upgrade from our rooftop tent. I think we're going to sleep like babies tonight. We've even got some little hand lotion and soaps and all kinds of fancy stuff here, which is something we definitely haven't had for over 2 weeks. Very nice.
I'm really glad that we have 2 nights here because I really need to relax a bit before the 1,000+ kilometers of driving that I need to do the next morning. And this is the ideal place to find some rest. It's quiet, comfortable, and surrounded by stunning bushveld.
So do you mind telling us what lovely lunch you've made us today?
It's a vetkoek and mince and veggie tea about inside.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've heard that these are famous.
Appreciate it.
We have a slow afternoon enjoying our fat cook, taking a solid nap and watching the game come in, and it would be straight to bed tonight as we need an early start the next morning.
Today has been a much needed day of rest. We had a very long driving day yesterday, and we have another 13 or 14 hour drive tomorrow. And I think without being here at this lodge and without being able to just switch off and do nothing all day, that would have been a step too far. It's been a long adventure, and to have 2 long driving days like that right at the end, you definitely want to be able to focus on the road and drive safely. So what a blessing this place has been, and we're ending off our time here with a nice braai around this very nice fireplace. Tomorrow morning we leave at 4 a.m, which means we'll probably get up at about 3 o'clock. So very long day, and of course when we get home we've got to unpack everything too. So thank you so much, Villy, for allowing us to stay at your amazing lodge, and yeah, we've really appreciated it.
So it's 4 o'clock in the morning and we are starting the long journey home, last stretch. Apparently the next few hours are going to involve a lot of really bad roads here in the northwest with lots of potholes, so we're going to be having to dodge those and hope our tires don't get any damage. But I think once we pass that, it's going to be pretty smooth sailing on some highways, so let's do it. The GPS tells us that we have a little over 12 hours to drive. Of course, it will be a little bit more than that when factoring in rest stops. It was going to be a long day. The temperature outside when we left was 5 degrees Celsius, which is bizarre considering that we'd just come from Kubu Island where the temperature sat in the mid-30s. It's amazing what a little bit of altitude and latitude can do. We'd heard that the roads in the northwest province were bad, but it was far worse than we expected. We would have been better off driving through the grass parallel to the road. There were just potholes everywhere. Our route takes us south along the N1, then along the N10 as we begin to descend down the escarpment, through the Karoo and back towards the coast. The blue water of Nelson Mandela Bay welcomes us, and we are finally back where it all started.
Well, after a 16-hour drive, we are back home, back in the traffic, back where it's green after being in such a dry environment for so long, and yeah, having basically crossed the whole of South Africa today. I'll tell you what though, there's no place like home. Really glad to be back, and I think I probably appreciate my home a little bit more. Although all the places we saw were incredible, there's no place like home. So I'm going to end it there. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Really appreciate it, and if you enjoyed the series, please let me know down below, and let me know if you'd like to see more like this in the future. See you next time.
It's difficult to find the words to wrap up this adventure in a way that does it justice. The whole experience was a whirlwind of adrenaline, wonder, tranquility, fear, joy, and exhaustion, all wrapped into one, and it felt as if it all happened way too fast. It's taken me almost an entire year to edit these 16 episodes, but I'm so glad that we went through the effort to capture these moments, because I feel that as I've sorted through all this footage and put it all together, it's allowed me to relive this whole tour day by day, but just slower, allowing me to process everything a bit deeper and really appreciate the small details. As we wrap everything up, I want to thank everyone who's come along on this journey with us virtually. You really should do this trip yourself at some point, but I hope that we've been able to inspire you in some way as you live vicariously through the lenses of our cameras.